Hello, I'm attorney Dan Marr from the National New Hampshire law firm of Hamilton Carrigan, and I've practiced law in New Hampshire for 39 years, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for 30 years. And during that period of time, I've both brought and defended claims for mental competency and undue influence in regards to gifts or inheritances of somebody, usually an older person. And often the fights are happening when they pass on. I've done several vlogs in regard to what undue influence and what mental competency is, so you can refer to those as to the details of that. I'm going to be focusing in on today in defending undue influence claims. So an undue influence claim basically is where somebody's saying that you unduly influence, which means you usurp their free will. And if somebody has diminished capacity, that might be easier to usurp their free will. If you're the only person that is controlling who they get to see, and maybe you're lying to them and you're telling them they don't have any assets when they think they do have assets, and you're getting some gifts to them, or you're threatening you're going to the nursing home unless you sign these documents leaving me everything, that can be the level of undue influence. What I've seen from siblings that are distraught or disappointed that they didn't get the inheritance that they thought they were getting, or some other relative distraught, they say, look, Susie, who was taking care of mom in her later years, unduly influenced her, and they made her sign a whole bunch of documents. Well, first, if the estate planning documents or whatever transfer documents were at a level when mom was mentally incompetent, well, that's something that you really should go into if you're looking at that. But if you're going after Susie for undue influence, and I'm representing Susie, what I'm going to be dealing with, I'm first going to look at the medical records to make sure that I understand what's going on with the mom. But I'm going to also address the issues of claims that are made. One of the claims I see often is somebody comes in and they're going around the house and they say, aha, look, we went to mom's desk and we saw her on the back of her a piece of paper, a whole bunch of signatures, a mom's signature. So therefore, Susie went and obviously stole from mom, and she was forging the signature. And in that situation, you want that person that's making the claim against Susie, before she makes that claim or he makes that claim, really should look at the bank records and find out what's going on in the bank records. Were there any deeds or checks going out when mom was still alive of mom's account that was obviously when mom's dead, the bank should be notified and there shouldn't be any monies going out. If it's in the mom's sole name, it goes through the estate. If it's in the trust, it goes through the trust documents. And if it's payable on death to Susie or to joint account, then it goes upon death under the New Hampshire laws directly to the person that's the other person on the account. But in that situation during the lifetime, there are a lot of people that are losing their, particularly older people that I know of, that I've dealt with quite a bit, that really care about their penmanship. I myself, I could be a doctor with my horrible writing on my penmanship. And that's a sarcastic. Sometimes doctors don't have the best handwriting, and I don't have good handwriting. But my mom really cared about her signature, and a lot of older people in their 80s and 90s, they care a great deal about how they sign their checks, so they actually practice that when they lose some of their mobility there. That doesn't mean that they're any less sharp. Their hand-eye coordination isn't as good as it used to be, and they want to practice to make sure they do their check that looks the right way. And they also are probably thinking for the bank. They don't want the bank to be thinking something. So if they're paying their bills, they're paying for their person that comes in to take care of them, they're paying for the utilities and the whatever else they have in their life that's an obligation of theirs. Obviously, that's not a case. So the mere fact that you see that doesn't matter. Take a look at the medical records to see if there's some diminished capacity. If they're making claims against Susie, saying Susie's unduly influencing him, I'm going to be looking at the medical records to see if there's a diminished capacity of mom. Was mom? I had a case where I defended a situation where the older person that was that passed on and then was challenged by the daughter as to undue influence as to the caretaker. The person that was doing this, the decedent, ultimate decedent, was doing everything online. He was sharp as a tack. He really knew what he was doing. And the caretaker didn't know, barely how to turn on a computer, and she didn't have the capabilities, really didn't have the capability at all to do anything financial. So in that situation, that matters for undue influence, because it's not undue influence. He's making all the decisions himself. In that particular case, he came to us while he was still alive and said, watch out for my daughter. I want to protect the caretaker. And we did that. And we successfully did that. And the daughter was completely unsuccessful, went up on appeal to the Supreme Court, completely unsuccessful in her attempts to rewrite history and act like she was a caring daughter, which she was not. So in that situation, you want to also look carefully. The key thing is, who are the people interacting with these people? How's Susie and mom and neighbors dealing with? I love situations if there's a 55, if they're in a 55 community or in the other community, and mom has a dog. Fantastic, because people get outside of the house and they get to talk with their neighbors, or they're out there doing yard work or doing something else. How the neighbors interact with mom and Susie, and maybe what mom might have said about the other relatives, all of that is extremely relevant. So that's where what I found most impactful for judges is real people talking about things. Sometimes experts going and saying undue influence, looking at medical records, saying there's undue influence. I had that in cases before, and I can pierce through that in defending an undue influence case pretty clear, because if that person's looking at the decedent's medical records, absent them saying the person's not competent, and then we would challenge, we'd have a deal with that as challenges, maybe with the lawyer that was doing the estate planning or anything else. Outside of that, they're saying that they're at diminished capacity level to be unduly influenced. They're not really a good expert for that. So I don't find experts to be good. They're good at showing a diminished capacity and maybe some confusion, particularly. And if they were the treating physician, maybe they actually have asked questions to show that they can be manipulated. But they're looking at, if they're an expert that hasn't ever treated the person, just looking at medical records, it's a tough argument for them to make. So in these situations, when you're dealing with this, take a good hard look at the people that are in their lives. Don't make presumptions as to things like signing on the back, them practicing their signatures, because it may not be your sibling practice or caretaker practicing signatures. It could very well be them. So take a look at bank records and see if are there any bad checks coming out of the account. If there are some checks that are coming out that are suspicious, and then you see these signatures, then there might be something. But if you're dealing with that, and I'm dealing with this, and you're pointing out to me when I'm defending Susie, look at all these signatures on the back of maybe a desk pad, that's very clearly to me probably mom doing that, unless there's some indications that there were checks going to Susie. I'm attorney Dan Marr at Hamlin Kerrigan at 603-883-5501, 603-883-5501. I've defended a number of these undue influence cases, and I'm happy to help if the opportunity arises. You can also check out my vlogs at nashwallaw.com, nashwallaw.com. That goes to our website, and then click my bio, and from there you can look at a variety of topics, including ones I've gone into more detail as to what is mental competency and what is undue influence. Look forward to working with you. The opportunity arises. Thank you.